Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Well, the word on the street today is that the man who is technically our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is going to be calling the federal election this Sunday. This means that Election Day could fall in late April or early May, since the Prime Minister does get to pick the length of the election period. I think right off the bat that this is a terrible idea for the Carney Liberals. I think that they believe that they need the election to be ASAP or they can't win. The problem is that the current news cycle is absolutely terrible for them, so I fully invite them to call the election right now. Canadians are quickly realizing that the man can't talk, that Trump thinks he's a weakling, and he has absolutely no accomplishments under his belt as prime minister other than getting rid of the consumer carbon tax, but effectively promising at the same time to greatly increase the industrial carbon tax while taking away the rebate, which means that prices are going to go up even more without anyone even being given back a portion of their money. So, looking good right now. Yes, they are up in the polls, but if you've seen any of my polling analysis, I don't actually think they're ahead in the polls. In fact, the two pollsters I trust, Innovative Research and Abacus Data, have never showed them even tied with the Conservatives. They show them at best 4 points behind the Conservatives, and I think that is going to be a high watermark for the Carney Liberals, especially now, again, reiterating that Donald Trump is saying he'd like to work with the Liberals, heavily implying that he thinks they're weaklings and he thinks that Pierre Poilievre is a strong individual who is not 100% aligned with him on trade, which of course Poilievre shouldn't be. He is running to be the Prime Minister of Canada, not running to be a US Senator. I want to go over some of the things the Liberal Party as well as the NDP are doing right now, and I just want to talk about why their messaging is totally off. I will admit when I think a party is actually doing good messaging. Even a week ago, I actually said the NDP put out a decent ad against Mark Carney. Since then, they've just started spiraling back into socialistic rhetoric about workers and billionaires. They're going to wipe out. The only thing saving Jagmeet Singh this election is that Mark Carney and the Liberals may be even more incompetent than he is when it comes to messaging, because they're doubling down on some of the same anti-Poilievre talking points that have failed for 2 years straight. These are the same things they've been saying about Poilievre when he was 20 points up in the polls and it never affected Poilievre's polling position. Anyways, but before I get into some of this stuff, guys, a reminder that if you want to follow my election coverage, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and of course, recommend the channel to your friends, family, and others. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by mid-December. Anyways, but let's start off with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, who had a press conference today and at it was actually asked explicitly about his abysmal polling numbers, in which he then rambles for about a minute and a half about workers and billionaires or whatever, because this is all the man has to say.
The NDP hasn't polled this low in decades. Some projections show that the NDP is at risk of losing up to 3/4 of the seats you have right now. Your own seat is at risk. After all this time of you as the leader, what do you think it is that you haven't been able to do to turn things around for the party?
This is a very important election. And I know that Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre would want nothing better than the NDP to disappear so they can continue to give big gifts to the billionaires, to favor rich CEOs.
Okay, sorry, but if that's currently true, he's admitting that they want to continue doing something. And yeah, the liberals give out a lot of subsidies and that's bad and whatnot, but he's doing it, he's phrasing this in such a socialistic way, but he's admitting at the same time that he actually hasn't done anything to stop this thing that's going on, because he says they're going to continue to do it. So what's the point of electing the NDP if he hasn't been able to stop it, despite the fact that he's been in a coalition government effectively with the liberals?
And not have us point out that actually we need an economy that works for working people. I'm sure they would love for us to not point out that they've completely ignored working people. I think Mark Carney would love for me to not be there to point out that a week of him being in prime minister, he's found time to do a whole bunch of other things, but nothing for workers at a time when they're actually worried about losing their jobs and they're already losing their jobs. Nothing to improve EI, nothing to say, hey, if you.
When has this man ever lowered taxes so that trades workers and other people don't have to have like a third of their income going to the government? He's such a hack in this way that Jagmeet Singh couldn't care less about working class people. He only cares about those working people who are already believing in the brand of the NDP, which is a very small, shrinking group of people because they're so sanctimonious and they get nothing done. And by the way, they never win because they're an incompetent party and never should they win.
You lose your job in this country, we're going to guarantee that you can keep your roof over your head. You're going to keep food on the table. Nothing. And Pierre Poilievre would like nothing more than New Democrats not to be there to point out, you show up to a factory where workers lost their jobs, and you're not going to mention anything for those workers that lost their job?
Because the better thing to do would be to cut taxes so that those workers could have those jobs back so that the business wouldn't have gone down in the first place. He is such a small-minded individual that he actually thinks the solution to job loss is giving the people who lost their jobs printed money from the government.
You're going to propose another big tax cut for big corporations?
Yes, that would actually help.
I mean, I'm sure they would like nothing better than that. News for them, news for everybody. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, thank you for Juno News for clipping that. Obviously, I don't have a team to go around clipping stuff, but he's just doing the same old thing. You think he would try a little bit. Here's a really bad headline for Mark Carney on the potential eve of an election. I know it's not Saturday yet, but we're very close to an election apparently being called. One of his consultants works at the Century Initiative. This is from My Politics. It says, Prime Minister Mark Carney has added the co-founder of a controversial lobbying group, that's the Century Initiative, that advocates for increasing the Canadian population to 100 million by 2100 to his council advisors on Canada-US relations. Yes, and that is absolutely insane. He is a big mass immigration guy. I don't like Mark Miller. He was a bad immigration minister. But even Mark Miller had to at some point recognize that immigration was too high, and he slashed new permanent residencies by 100,000 a year. It's still at 395,000 per year. It should be at like 125,000, and then we should have a very strict point system and value system on top of it. But he got rid of Mark Miller probably because he wants to bring someone in who wants more population, because it's the way that Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau for years has been faking good GDP numbers. Our GDP sucks. Even our overall GDP has slowed to a crawl in terms of growth, and our per capita GDP is only going up by 0.5%. It's only gone up by 0.5% in several years. In fact, it's been going down. We made a few years of gains under Trudeau for the first 3 years, but then the rot set in and everything started falling off. Carney wants to go back to that. This is a button that the Conservatives need to hit every single day, is the immigration one. This guy is an immigration radical, and he cannot be let in, or your city is not going to look the same in a few years because it's just going to be covered in economic migrants who don't really want to be here other than the fact that they work jobs with subsidized wages from the federal government. But moving on to a new piece. This is the new angle the Liberals have to make up for the fact that Donald Trump did in fact endorse them. And it's to point out back when Trump said something slightly nice about Poilievre in January. By the way, it is currently March. It doesn't matter what he said on January 6th of 2025. It has been overcome by the fact that he says, I don't like Poilievre anymore. I like the Liberals.
Are you looking forward to working with Pierre Poilievre, the new guy?
I am. If that's what happens, certainly it would be very good. Our views would be more aligned, certainly.
Okay. Yeah, the Liberals can point this out. But then Poilievre can just say, man, since then, because I haven't wanted to work with him on trade, because I haven't agreed with him on trade, and obviously somebody running for to be Prime Minister of Canada shouldn't 100% agree with the U.S.'s trade position. And Poilievre has even agreed limitedly about the border needing to be secured and there's too many drugs and stuff like that. But then at some point he says, at some point the tariffs are still not justifiable. Again, if anything, this is helping Poilievre. This is like why it's actually good for the Conservative Party to be attacked over its pro-life MPs. I'm personally pro-life. I think the Conservative Party should be more pro-life. But every time the Liberals attack the Conservatives as pro-life, all it does is it reinforces that pro-life voters are going to be voting Conservative because it's the only party with pro-life MPs. And anyone who's rabidly pro-choice to the point that bothers them and they're not going to vote Conservative, we're never voting Conservative in the first place. So this is an attack that all it's doing is reinforcing to people who like Trump inside the Conservative Party that, yes, Trump can confirm that Poilievre is much more like him than Mark Carney or Justin Trudeau are. At the same time, that he doesn't like Poilievre because he's tough and he'd be tough to negotiate with, and he'd rather deal with Prime Minister Gumby, Mark Carney, because he has no spine. And, Mark Carney is also bringing back terrible ministers like Chrystia Freeland, who Trump has experience getting one over on when it comes to the USMCA negotiations. People try and give her credit because she basically protected certain Canadian industries. She took certain things off the table. But in fact, we did lose on that front. I think that we actually didn't really lose from the perspective that the U.S. kind of forced Canada to be a little bit more pro-free market. At the same time, the Canada's goal was to try and protect as many industries as possible. So from the Liberals' own benchmark list, they did a bad job. Anyways, so now let's move on to how they're trying to pitch Mark Carney. That same press conference that I've showed you in previous videos that he was stumbling all over himself, trying to say what he was going to talk to Trump about on the phone, they actually had the audacity to clip that same press conference, a better moment for him, and it's still nothing. They could only get a 30-second clip of him talking somewhat coherently, and it still sounds like pablum. This man is going to underperform so hard when people actually are seeing clips of him every day on the news, realizing he sounds like a wind-up robot.
Canada is strong, and it's going to get stronger. We can give ourselves more than anything that President Trump or other trade partner can take away. Okay, that's a basic point. And that if there is a misconception of that in the United States, I'm not saying the president has that misconception, but if there's a misconception of that, we're going to disabuse that misconception. We're going to grow this economy because that's good for Canadians, better for our future, and we can do it.
I think another good nickname is calling him Prime Minister Eeyore. We have Mark Carney, Prime Minister Eeyore. We have Gumby. The man just doesn't give you presents. Do you think this guy's going to win a debate against Pierre Poilievre? Is Pierre Poilievre the best debater on the planet? No, not really. And that's not a shot against him. That's not his primary thing. He's great at speaking. But it's not like you're sending in some debate club champion. But Poilievre can be firm about things. This guy is so soft, and it's going to destroy them. And now here is their other angle on Pierre Poilievre. They're doing the same talking point again. They've been doing this for 2 years now. This comparison actually, again, makes Canadians less likely to listen to the Liberals' fear-mongering that Pierre Poilievre is like Trump because their comparisons are so shallow. Look at this. Is anyone actually going to decide to not vote for Poilievre because of this?
Trump was right about everything.
How did I get it so right when so many others got it so wrong?
Everything is broken.
Everything is broken.
We're defunding them.
We will defund them.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately,
so far, what's wrong with any of these? In context, both of them were right about the domestic and foreign issues they're talking about. It was that what Poilievre was saying, that he was right about inflation. He was right about inflation. So because Poilievre and him both speak the English language, apparently they're now bad.
a lot of people don't.
They have no common sense.
Your organization.
You are attacking our news organization.
Your organization.
Can you give us a chance?
We have basically a liberal heckler who snuck in here today.
It's so weak. The liberals have never gotten over the idea that they are simply just going to be able to say Trump and Poilievre, and that's going to be good. The thing is, the actual conservatives have a better Trump angle on Mark Carney with the endorsement. They can play Mark Carney stumbling over his words, not knowing what to say when the topic of Trump comes up, and then just cut over to Trump saying, yeah, I'd rather negotiate with the liberals. It's a blockbuster ad for the conservatives to run. And the conservatives, and I'm willing to criticize the conservatives where they need criticism, but they've been doing a really good job with the advertising recently. It's actually quite good. Their attacks on Mark Carney actually land. And that's the thing. When you're fighting a political battle, you want to hit hard. You don't want these like cute angles of showing Trump and Poilievre saying some of the same things and trying to get people to come to the conclusion that oh, we can't have Poilievre. He's too much like Trump, because nobody watches that ad and actually thinks that anything wrong was said.
First and
Here's a
foremost, I
conservative.
think what President Trump wants, he wants several things. I mean, he wants good, high-paying jobs in America. He wants more investment in America. He wants repatriation of many American industries and firms to the United States.
I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal.
Conservative Party listens to me sometimes. They don't want me in their house for some reason. They won't talk to me directly. But see, I can say that two days in advance, say this is the exact ad they should run, and they do run that ad with the added little touch of the Brookfield stuff. Good job, guys. Give that person a raise, whoever put together the ad that I was suggesting. Maybe it was so obvious that they did it anyways, but it's been good. Everything has actually been super solid when it comes to them going after Mark Carney. And the thing is that, like, I like this little graphic they put together, the Carney sold out Canadian jobs thing. They should just do tons and tons of this stuff regarding him and Brookfield, his conflicts of interest. The conflict of interest angle, that's like the worst issue that Carney has right now, because he's made it an issue by not willing to tell anybody about what's in the blind trust. He is so stupid. He pretends that because he's put the stuff in the blind trust, he doesn't even know what's in it anymore. It's in a blind trust. Other people are managing it. I don't know what's in the blind trust. It went into the blind trust 5 minutes ago. He's like an infant who doesn't know object permanence. You know what you were invested in, and people want to know. And that's why even Rosemary Barton has to answer the question. Then he attacked her like a lady who is so pro-liberal, she might still get his name tattooed to her forehead. That, oh, well, you have ill will against me for asking me about my conflicts of interest. Yes, tell people what you're invested in, so that if that company gets a big contract out of nowhere and they did not have a competitive contracting process, people can, ask some questions. If you're giving out sole source contracts to people that you were heavily invested in, that's a problem. He can have a blind trust and not know technically what the money's in. But he also knows that his managers are not just going to sell everything off and buy new stocks overnight. It's going to mostly stay the same. So people would like to know if any of those businesses are getting handouts, subsidies, because that's what the Liberals do. They are pro-business more than the NDP, but only from the perspective that they give businesses they like a lot of money. The NDP just taxes them to death and tries to nationalize them, whereas the Conservatives, when they're acting properly, cut taxes and let people do their own thing. So anyways, yeah, I don't even care what the polling situation looks like. The pollsters I follow already showed a decent lead for the Conservatives at the high watermark for Carney. We're going to see a collapse in the coming days. Again, I will say that if you want to follow my polling videos especially, subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be breaking it down into detail. I'll show you the pollsters I trust. I'll still show you what other ones are saying, because even the other pollsters demonstrate that the Conservatives have strength. Ipsos put out a poll recently where the Liberals were up by 4 points. Again, I don't think they're actually up by 4 points. I think these pollsters are accidentally, outside of Ecos, I think most of them are just accidentally overpolling Liberals and not doing enough demographic questions to make sure that their Ontario sample isn't downtown Toronto only. But even in these samples that are not great for the Conservatives, 40%, when you do a head-to-head, who would you rather have as Prime Minister? Poilievre gets 40%, and Carney gets 60%. And you could say that's a great lead for Carney. Okay, but it's a sample with a lot more lefty people in it, and Poilievre is still grabbing 40%. So he has a solid base of 40%, considering that there are 3 left-wing parties, and there really is only the one Conservative Party. PPC exists. They're not winning anything because they don't want to win anything. They're going to waste donor money again, pretending they're running a campaign, giving no money to the actual candidates to knock doors or buy literature, and they're going to fail again. So if you're considering voting PPC because you read the platform and you like it, guys, the platform doesn't mean anything when they're not even serious about running. They're basically making a fool of you by getting you to give them money to have a nice platform on their website that they're not marketing. They're not going door to door trying to win. They don't care to win. And so really it's just them saying a bunch of nice crap and then doing nothing with it. So that's it for me today, guys. This thing's going to get interesting, so make sure to follow me, and I'll see you guys next time.